about the last Shakespeare play you saw? Did you understand everything that was said? Did you get all the jokes? The answer is probably not. Those of us who study English probably understood the story, but there was almost certainly at least one thing that got past each of us. If the language of Shakespeare is English from the 1500s, then why is it difficult to understand? Because English has always changed and will continue to change long after we are gone. Some people fear that my generation is ruining the language and that children don't know how to write formal English anymore, but this simply isn't true. Although the notion of changing the English language is horrible to many older people, texting, internet slang, and spoken adaptations of them are working their way into our language, and we should not be concerned with the future of formal English. Memes and internet culture. The first thing you should know is that languages change to suit the needs of those who speak it. My generation is changing English to suit our sense of humor and our need for simplicity. We live in a fast-paced world where you have to either be 3 steps ahead or sink. So it makes sense that we would shorten words like though to though, are to are, and you to you. TLDR is probably the best example of this, which stands for too long didn't read. Beyond the convenience of internet slang, we see that these misspellings are also inside jokes. If I was to say, "Cash me outside, how about that?" on the internet, everyone would realize that I am referring to the popular meme that came from a girl on Dr. Phil and that it is a joke. In fact, excerpts from pop culture can take on a life of their own. When college kids are done and walk away from one another, they commonly say, "Bye, Felicia." But when you ask them where that came from, most of them are not aware that it came from the 1995 movie Friday. They also help form identity. Noam Gal et al. States that public discourse is central to the construction of any collective identity. I know from personal experience that it is possible to become good friends with someone you've only met online. How do you form this friendship? Through technology. So the only way to share something special with them is through media such as memes, slang, and YouTube videos. This allows people to connect to anyone in the world to make friends and have a whole nother support system. Slang's effect on writing. Another argument against texties is that it negatively affects the writing of students. Fortunately, this isn't true. In fact, in 2008, when Plester et al. Did a study with 10 to 12-year-old girls, he found that texting, whether they used abbreviations or not, had a positive effect on both verbal reasoning and spelling ability. Nina Kemp found the same positive correlation between text messages and literacy and stated in her 2010 study that teens use abbreviations often to avoid sending 2 messages when they have a limited number of text messages to send per month. Due to the age of available resources, both of those studies are quite dated when technology is considered. In fact, I do not text anyone that uses abbreviations anymore due to predictive text and most phone plans containing unlimited texting. The use of texting abbreviations also seems to decrease as we grow older and more mature. Singhal and Sundar support the use of textees and suggest that these forms of slang are necessary for social development and that, provided the student can determine when it is appropriate to use either form, it can also be a useful social tool. Slang in spoken language. As technology becomes a vital part of our society, we see internet slang and even textees working its way into the spoken English language. It is common to hear young people say LOL or OMG in conversation. At me is a common phrase that is used around Jacksonville State University's campus in particular. We also see words like selfie, ginger, and safe space being added not only to our vocabulary, but to our dictionaries as well. Slang is certainly not new to English. In the December 1928 issue of American Speech, Frederick S. Mardott commented on the many slang words and phrases that came from Shakespeare and have worked their way into our language. A good example of this is the phrase, "the long and the short of it," which comes from Shakespeare's The Merry Wives of Windsor. Slang is certainly not new to the English language and is here to stay. We can't know exactly what English should be because it's constantly changing to fit the needs of its speakers. When you or someone you know is afraid that English is changing and we are in the process of ruining the integrity of the language, there are two important things to remember. First, remember that change is difficult for everyone, and that the older generation has always feared that the younger generation is ruining the world or doing something wrong. Socrates was convinced that the newest technology of his age was dangerous. Second, remember that English is a living language, and it is completely natural for it to change with society. The job of a language is to allow those who speak it to communicate and express themselves. We must remember that, like the advances in technology, if we refuse to change and upgrade our language based on the requirements and needs of its users, it will become obsolete and people will find something that works better for them.